Hal had given to Oliver many years ago. And so Ollie shoots an arrow right through Black Hand's hand, pinning him to the wall. And Ollie and Mia have things covered, but then Hal all of a sudden appears and he apologizes to Oliver. He says, "I'm sorry, I cannot help this." And he transforms into the Spectre and he renders vengeance. He renders a sentence upon Black Hand. He turns Black Hand's lower right arm into ash and dust. And as Oliver says, "Hal, what the?" We see Hal's face peering under the Spectre's hood, and he says, "I'm sorry, Ollie, I couldn't help it." And he disappears. And so Ollie decides that he has to make his way to JLA Watchtower to tell the Leaguers what's going on. And when he gets there, he sees that Guy's body is still fighting to right itself. And Ollie's wearing that Green Lantern ring on his hand when it suddenly duplicates itself. And the permanent duplicate Green Lantern ring flies on to Guy Gardner's hand, and it completes his restoration as a completely genetic human being and restores him to his classic Green Lantern look and status. And Guy and John, for whatever reason, ransack the Watchtower and escape. And so the other heroes basically leave Ollie on his own at the Watchtower. But fortunately, Kyle arrives pretty soon. And it turns out that Kyle was given a mission by Ganthet to go to the heart of the sun to recover a tomb which contains the perfectly preserved body of Hal Jordan. Meanwhile, back on Earth, Carol Ferris feels compelled to go to that part of the now pasteurized coast city, which was once home to Ferris Aircraft. And when she gets there, she's shocked to find that Ferris Aircraft has been restored. The ground has been paved. There's a landing strip. There are streetlights in the area. Just no civilians except for Hal, who comes up to Carol and says that he decided that he wanted to fix one more thing. And of course has her very worried. And before she can have much of a talk with Hal, the Spectre pulls Hal into the Spectre Force's mindscape, where a major revelation is about to be dropped. And this takes place at the same time as Kyle has his own major revelation to share with Oliver. So back in the mindscape, the Spectre explains to Hal that Hal is not Parallax. And Hal can't believe that. He says, "No, I was Parallax, but I've moved beyond that." The Spectre says, "No, you were the host for an entity." And this leads into Kyle's explanation that eons ago there existed a large yellow-hued entity called Parallax, which inflicted fear and terror in the denizens of all of the worlds which the parasite passed through. And so the newly minted Guardians of the Universe took it upon themselves to construct a giant prison that would house Parallax. And this prison took the form of the Green Lantern Central Power Battery. And over the ages, the Guardians forgot about the existence of Parallax, and the entity became remembered simply as the yellow weakness. And this explained why, since the beginning of the Green Lantern's time, a Green Lantern ring was powerless against that which was colored yellow. Kyle then gives a quick recap of more recent Green Lantern history, starting with Hal Jordan's entry into Green Lantern Corps, Sinestro's downfall, And Kyle explains to Oliver that during his imprisonment in the Central Power Battery, Sinestro became aware of the presence of Parallax. Sinestro awakened Parallax and taught Parallax how to communicate and influence the wearer of a Green Lantern ring. And that particular bearer of the Green Lantern ring was Hal Jordan. And the first signs of Parallax's corruption of Hal came with Hal's hair turning white at the temples, something to which Hal brushed off as stress. He was just going white early, and it was okay. It was a sign of experience. But what was really going on was Parallax was slowly whispering in Hal's ear, filling him with feelings of fear and doubt. And Parallax was just biding its time until a tragedy which would occur in which Hal's spirit would be broken, and Parallax could truly reach out and compel Hal to come to the power battery to bond with the entity. And of course, that tragic event was the destruction of Coast City, which led Hal to snap. Kyle reveals that it was Parallax who whispered in Hal's ear and suggested that he used the power of a Green Lantern ring to try to resurrect Coast City, and that's what led to Hal being admonished by the Guardians, leading to Hal's mad run to Oa, culminating with Hal killing a hard light, well, turned out to be a hard light construct of Sinestro, and killing Kilowog before entering the Central Power Battery. And there's this neat panel of art in which Ethan Van Sciver shows that two-page splash from Green Lantern number 50, in which Hal is wearing the Parallax armor for the first time, is holding his one arm in the air. It's actually Hal cradling Parallax's head in the crook of his arm as the entity grafts itself onto Parallax's spirit. Hal Jordan's soul. And so Kyle explains to Oliver that Hal's villainous turn was really his being corrupted and being forced to enter this symbiotic relationship with the living entity of fear. Back in the Mindscape, the Spectre reveals to Hal that right from the first moment, Spectre realized that Hal was the unwitting host of this malicious entity. And the reason why the Spectre agreed to bond with Hal in the first place was the Spectre wanted to burn Parallax out of Hal's soul. The idea was that the Spectre would burn the entity, destroy it, and free Hal to go on to heaven, his spirit having been cleansed. Unfortunately, the Spectre admits that this did not work, and now they're at the point where the Spectre and Hal are about to be consumed by Parallax, who's been biding his time, has just become too powerful, even for the Spectre to contain. And indeed, that's what happens. Parallax comes to the fore and consumes both Hal and the Spectre, and we get a classic Parallax in the green armor, but this time with a full set of very sharp fangs for teeth. Now, the question here is, well, why didn't the Spectre just tell Hal this up front in Day of Judgment? And, I mean, pulling back the curtain, real-life situation, there was no time, there was no way in 1999 that DC was allowing Hal to come back as a hero. Who knows if Jeff Johns even had this whole Parallax revelation set out so many years back. But in storytelling terms, you think of it this way: when a person gets sick and they see a doctor, and doctor prescribes medication, doctor will say, okay, well, this medication will make you feel better, but if you want to really work, you have to keep your spirits up. You have to fight. If you don't keep your spirits up, it's going to take longer for the medicine to work, and it might not work at all. And you see this in people who have serious illnesses and diseases. They are encouraged to keep up the fight so that their natural antibodies will work with the prescribed medication or treatment in order to heal the patient. And I think that's akin to what was going on with the Spectre in its attempts to free Hal of Parallax. I think at the time of Day of Judgment, the Spectre realized that Hal's soul was broken, his willpower was at an all-time low, and if the Spectre was forthwith with Hal right then, Hal would have been crushed even further, and there's no way that Hal would have had the will to fight back against his bonding with Parallax. So by making Hal go on the spiritual odyssey, by quote-unquote punishing Hal and then slowly rewarding him at points with Helen and allowing the JLA to recognize him, this was a way of helping Hal to build up his will so that he would reach the point where he could help the Spectre in fighting off Parallax. And indeed, that's what happens. Midway through Green Lantern Rebirth, Hal gets it within him to fight, to separate his soul from the Spectre, and in the end, that also releases the Spectre. And once they're all separated and the Spectre is restored to its classic guise, Hal's soul calls upon the Spectre to destroy Parallax, and the Spectre refuses and says, no, you mortals dare to think that you can command me. I'm the Spectre. This is a purely human matter. I will not deal with this. My Lord calls to me, and I must answer. And the Spectre departs. He's gone for the rest of Rebirth. And Guy Gardner half-jokingly states, did we just get ditched by the Spectre? Now that line, my Lord calls to me and I must answer, had fans really excited at the time of Infinite Crisis. I'll talk more about that when we get to the Crispus Allen as Spectre Spotlight installment of this series. But as it would turn out in Green Lantern Rebirth, Hal is restored, mind, body, and soul. He becomes Green Lantern again. He and the other human lanterns, as well as Kilowog, are able to imprison Parallax in the Central Power Battery. The Guardians are restored to their older, iconic status. And in the end, Hal and Carol have a heart-to-heart about how much Hal remembers during his time as the Spectre. But once again, folks, I've managed to fill up in your 45 minutes. So I'm going to come back in a week's time and just talk about the last couple pages of Green Lantern Rebirth, where Hal comments on his time as the Spectre. And then we'll take a look at the legacy of this period in which Hal Jordan was the host of the Spectre. So until another 7 days have come and gone, this class is, believe it or not, in recess.